Lila and the Moonlit Garden of Dreams, the garden behind the moon. Lila was already half asleep when the evening began to fold itself around her little room. The last light of the day brushed the edges of her curtains with a soft golden glow, and the shadows on the ceiling looked like slow, sleepy clouds drifting across a very quiet sky. She lay on her bed under a pale blue blanket dotted with tiny silver stars, the same pattern as her favorite nightdress. In one hand, she held her small moon-shaped pendant, warm from her touch. In the other, she held a book that lay gently across her chest, its pages open. Its story paused in the soft hush of the room. The house was quiet in that special bedtime way. Somewhere in the kitchen, a clock ticked a slow, steady rhythm. On the street outside, a car rolled past, its sound already softened by the night. A breeze slipped in through the window and brushed Lila's cheeks as if it were tucking her in. She took a deep breath of the cool, faintly sweet air and let it out in one long, sleepy sigh. Her eyes blinked once, slowly. Then again, words on the page seemed to drift and sway like they, too, were getting tired. The lines melted into one another until they were no longer words at all, but just soft, dark shapes on a cream-colored sea. Lila's fingers loosened around the book. Her head tilted a little to the side, resting more fully on the pillow, and the moon pendant glimmered faintly in the last light, a tiny crescent of silver against her hand. The world around her began to grow quiet and thick and gentle, like being wrapped in the softest blanket. The sounds in the house moved farther away, as if they were slowly walking down a hallway and closing a door behind them. The ticking of the clock softened. The distant car faded completely. All that remained was the soft whisper of the night breeze and the steady, slow beat of Lila's own heart in that calm space between waking and dreaming. Lila's thoughts floated like little boats on a still pond. She thought about stars and how they looked like tiny lamps in a velvet sky. She thought about gardens and how they smelled when the air was cool and the flowers were resting. She thought about the moon and how, on some nights, it looked close enough to hold Dot. Her eyelids grew heavy, warm, and comfortable like little quilts. She let them close, not all at once, but gradually, the way the sky does at sunset. The book slipped a little lower on her chest. Her hand relaxed around the moon pendant. Her breath came slow and even, in and out, just like the tide of a very gentle sea dot. As her mind drifted, the edges of her room began to soften. The lines of the dresser, the chair in the corner, the bookshelf with its tidy rows of stories, all of them seemed to blur, as if fog were drifting quietly through the room. The ceiling above her melted into gentle gray. The curtains floated as though they were underwater, moving in slow, graceful waves. The moon pendant on her chest gave a tiny, secret shimmer in her mind's eye, where dreams begin to paint their first soft pictures. Lila saw a small light. It was not bright or harsh. It was a warm, silvery glow, like the first star that appears in the sky just after the sun has disappeared. The light hovered gently in the dark, as calm as a candle in a room with no wind. It pulsed once, twice, in time with her breathing, in and out. The light grew a little larger, and as it did, the darkness around it faded, revealing the shape of a gate. It was tall and curved, made of silver branches that twisted together like vines. Tiny leaves of glass hung from those branches, each one catching the light and turning it into something softer, pale blues, tender lilacs, the quiet color of early morning before anyone has spoken. The gate stood in the middle of nothing, as if it had been drawn on the dark itself. Lila felt her dream self, standing there, barefoot and relaxed, in her pale blue nightdress with little silver stars. Her braid brushed the center of her back. Her moon pendant rested just over her heart, glowing gently like a friend who whispers, "I'm here." She reached out and touched the gate. The silver branches were cool, but not cold. They felt smooth and familiar, like the pages of a favorite book. At her touch, the glass leaves chimed softly, a sound so delicate it was almost like the tinkling of distant bells made of snowflakes. The sound floated slowly through the quiet, curling around her like a lullaby. Lila took a breath, soft and deep. Her chest rose. Her chest fell. As she stood there, the darkness behind the gate began to lighten. Soft colors appeared, first faint, lavenders, gentle blues, pale greens, like the inside of a seashell. They slowly unfolded into shapes, a path of moonlit stones, a garden full of sleeping flowers, and trees that stretched their branches toward a sky filled with stars. The gate gave a tiny click, as if it had just made up its mind, and then it swung open. The garden beyond the gate was bathed in a silvery glow, as if the moon had stepped down from the sky and decided to stay a while. Petals glimmered softly in the light, like they had been painted with starlight. Tall flowers with round faces nodded slowly in a breeze. Lila could not feel, but somehow knew was there. Small, bell-shaped blossoms hung from slender stems, their edges glowing gently, as though each one held a tiny lantern of its own. The air was cool and sweet. It smelled of lavender and warm milk, and the faintest hint of vanilla, like cookies that had just been taken from the oven far, far away. The scent wrapped itself around Lila's shoulders like a soft shawl. She felt her whole body relax, from the top of her head down to her toes. Her shoulders dropped, her hands unclenched. Even her thoughts felt softer, slower, like they were moving through warm honey. A path of round, smooth stones wound through the garden. Each stone seemed to hold a little pool of moonlight in its center, shining just enough to show her the way without ever being too bright. Lila stepped forward, her dream feet touching the path. The stones were pleasantly cool, like stepping into a shallow stream on a summer evening. She took one step, then another. The sound of her steps was almost nothing at all, just the quietest whisper of contact, like a page being turned in a very gentle way. Above her, the sky was a deep, velvety blue, sprinkled with stars. They did not wink or flash sharply. Instead, they glowed steadily, like tiny, peaceful eyes, watching over the garden. The moon hung low, round and full and soft, its light spilling down like a waterfall made of silk. Every time Lila looked at it, she felt calmer, as though the moon was breathing with her dot in and out. The flowers along the path swayed as she passed, not quickly, but very slowly, as if they were stretching in their sleep. Some of them had petals like folded feathers. Some were shaped like soft, fluffy clouds resting on stems. A few of them were still tightly closed, as if they had decided not to wake at all tonight, preferring to dream in their safe, quiet buds. Lila paused beside one of the cloud flowers. Its petals were white and pale silver, curled in gentle layers like swirls of whipped cream. She reached out and brushed the back of her fingers against it. The surface was velvety and warm, like a pillow that had been waiting just for her. The flower gave a tiny sigh, and for a moment she thought it might open its petals to look at her. Instead, it sank a little deeper into its stem, as if nuzzling into sleep. "Sweet dreams," Lila whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was speaking with her mouth or only with her thoughts. The words drifted over the garden and seemed to settle on everything: the flowers, the stones, the air. Somewhere nearby, a very soft sound began. It was not the buzzing of bees. It was not the chirping of crickets. It was something like humming, but gentler, as if the night itself were singing under its breath. It rose and fell in a slow, soothing rhythm, as steady as a heartbeat and as light as the breeze that stirred the leaves. Lila followed the sound with her ears, and then with her feet. The path curved gently, not sharply, allowing her to turn without ever feeling rushed. The stones beneath her feet glowed a little brighter, then softer again, like they were breathing. Flowers bent their heads together as she passed, as though they were sharing secrets made only of yawns and sighs. The humming drew her to a small clearing in the middle of the garden. There, at the center, stood a single tree. It was not tall or towering. It was just the right size, with branches that spread out like welcoming arms. Its bark was a pale silver gray, smooth and lightly shimmering. Instead of leaves, hundreds of tiny star-shaped blossoms grew along its branches, each one glowing a gentle blue-white dot. At the base of the tree, curled in a nest of soft moss that looked like a cushion made from little pieces of moonlight, lay a small creature. It was a fox, but not quite like the foxes Lila had seen in books. Its fur was the color of early evening clouds, soft gray with a faint silvery sheen. A gentle glow seemed to come from within its coat, as if someone had lit a tiny lantern inside its heart. Its ears were tipped with white, like bits of snow. Its tail, long and fluffy, was wrapped around its body twice, making a cozy circle of warmth. The fox's eyes were closed. Its chest rose and fell in a slow, even rhythm with each breath. A tiny thread of soft sound slipped from its nose, a quiet humming that matched the song of the garden. It was this humming that Lila had heard. It wrapped around her like a blanket of music, smoothing out any small edges of worry or leftover thoughts from the day. Lila stepped closer, moving carefully, letting her footsteps fall in time with the fox's breathing. In and out, in and out. Her own breath matched the rhythm without her even trying. She felt her dream heart slow just a little more, steady and calm. She knelt beside the fox, the soft moss like a warm cloud beneath her knees. The glow from the star blossoms above fell over them like a quiet snowfall of light. For a moment, Lila only watched the tiny creature sleep, feeling as if she were watching the very idea of rest itself, curled up at the foot of a tree. Gently, the fox's ears twitched, its nose wiggled once, as if it were sniffing some new, pleasant scent. Slowly, very slowly, its eyes opened. They were a pale, luminous blue, deep and kind, with a hint of silver in the center. They did not snap or stare. They simply looked at Lila as if they had always known she would come. "Hello," the fox said, and its voice sounded almost like another piece of the humming, soft and low and comforting. "I wondered when you'd find the gate." Lila did not feel surprised that the fox could speak. In this moonlit garden, where flowers slept and stones breathed, and the sky watched like a gentle guardian, speaking foxes felt as natural as the tide. She smiled, a small, quiet smile that fit perfectly in this place. "I'm Lila," she said, in a voice that was soft and steady, as if she were afraid of disturbing the petals on the tree. "Is this a dream?" The fox tilted its head a little, as though considering the question. Its tail uncurled halfway, then wrapped around again, as if it were tucking itself in once more. "This," the fox replied, "is the moonlit garden of dreams. It is where tired hearts and sleepy minds come to rest when the moon is kind and the night is gentle." It blinked slowly, its eyes like two small pools of starlight. "You are dreaming, yes, but you are also safe. You are always safe here." The words sank into Lila like warm tea on a cold day. Safe. The garden seemed to echo the word. The leaves rustled softly. The blossoms glowed a little warmer. The breeze brushed her cheek like a mother's hand. "Will I get lost?" Lila asked, not out of fear, but out of the soft curiosity that comes when one has already decided to trust. "Not if you follow the paths that feel like a lullaby," the fox answered. "Not if you listen to your breathing and to the moon." It stretched, a small, lazy movement, then curled its tail back around itself. "My name is Morrow," it added. "I dream here every night. I can walk with you for a while, if you like, until your eyes feel heavy again and the garden gently closes its petals." Lila's shoulders relaxed even more. She felt as though every part of her was being carefully placed on a comfortable pillow. One thought at a time. "I would like that," she said. Morrow yawned, then the biggest, slowest yawn she had ever seen. His tiny jaw opened wide, his eyes squeezed shut, and his ears folded back for just a moment. The yawn seemed to ripple out through the garden. A few flowers shivered and sank deeper into their stems. Somewhere, a distant bell blossom chimed once and then fell silent again. Lila felt her own mouth open in a soft, answering yawn. Her eyes, even in the dream, grew a little heavier. The moon above them glowed a little softer, as if it were dimming the lights in a room where someone was ready to sleep. "Come," Morrow murmured, his voice now even gentler. "There are many places in the garden, and all of them know how to help you rest. There is the pond of quiet echoes, where worries sink like pebbles. There is the path of floating feathers, where every step feels lighter than the last. And beyond the garden," his eyes flicked briefly to the sky, where the stars seemed to lean closer. "Beyond the garden is the cloud bridge, and behind that, the lantern hills. You don't have to see everything tonight. Dreams are patient. They will wait." He rose slowly, not with a sudden leap, but with the soft, careful movements of someone who has just woken from the very best nap. He shook himself once, and tiny specks of silver light scattered from his fur, floating gently down to settle into the moss. Then he stepped onto the glowing path. Lila stood and followed, her feet finding the smooth stones as naturally as if she had walked there 100 times before. Side by side, girl and fox moved beneath the star-blossomed tree. Above them, the branches swayed in a rhythm that matched their breathing. Around them, the garden whispered its wordless, soothing song. With each step, Lila felt the day drifting farther away. Homework, chores, little worries, tiny disappointments, they slipped off her shoulders, like leaves falling quietly from a tree. All that remained was the softness of the night, the glow of the moon, the sound of Morrow's paws on the stones, and the steady, sleepy beating of her own heart in and out as they walked. The path curved deeper into the moonlit garden. New shapes waited in the gentle distance, wrapped in silver mist and starlight. Lila's eyes were wide but calm. Her body was relaxed, ready to follow the dream wherever it wanted to lead, knowing that it would always, always carry her safely toward rest. Somewhere far away in a quiet bedroom, under a pale blue blanket dotted with tiny silver stars, Lila's real-world body lay peaceful and still. A small moon pendant rose and fell with each slow breath. The night outside her window deepened, and the first stars of the actual sky watched over her, just as the dream stars did. The moonlit garden opened its winding paths in front of her, and the journey into deeper, softer sleep had only just begun. The pond of quiet echoes, Lila and Morrow, walked side by side along the moonlit path, their steps so gentle they sounded like nothing more than a whisper on the stones. The moonlit garden around them breathed in a slow, steady rhythm. Blossoms swayed, branches stretched, and somewhere high above, the moon watched with a calm, silver gaze. The air felt even softer now, as if the night had wrapped itself in an extra layer of quiet just for them. Lila noticed that every time she took a breath, the garden seemed to breathe with her. When she inhaled, the flowers lifted their faces toward the sky. When she exhaled, they lowered their heads and nestled deeper into their stems, as though tucking themselves in. She let her own breathing become long and slow, matching the rhythm of the place. In and out, in and out. With each breath, her chest felt lighter, as if there was more room inside for calm to stretch and yawn and settle. Morrow walked just ahead of her, his silver-gray fur glowing softly in the moonlight. His fluffy tail moved in a slow, relaxed curve with every step. Lila found that watching him was soothing. The way he moved was never sharp or sudden. He padded along with the dreamy ease of someone who knows exactly where all the comfortable places in the world are. "Where are we going first?" Lila asked, her voice gentle, as if she were speaking in a library made of stars. Morrow's ears twitched in the direction of her words. He looked back over his shoulder, his pale blue eyes warm and unhurried. "It likes to meet new dreamers. It's very good at taking the thoughts that feel too loud and turning them into something soft and far away." Lila thought about that as they walked. She remembered moments from her day that had felt a little noisy, questions she hadn't answered yet, little worries that had wandered into her mind before bedtime and didn't seem to want to leave. They weren't scary, exactly, just busy, like birds hopping from branch to branch, never quite still. "Will it take those thoughts?" she asked. "The ones that keep hopping?" "If you let it," Morrow said. "The pond never keeps anything you truly need. It only holds the little echoes that trouble your sleep. It turns them into ripples and lets them drift to the other side." The idea made Lila feel oddly comforted, like someone had just walked into a messy room and quietly begun folding blankets. She looked ahead, curious now, but not in a restless way. Her curiosity was slow and soft, like a feather drifting down. The path began to slope gently downward. The stones grew cooler beneath her bare feet, as if they had been lying in the shade all afternoon. The scent of lavender deepened, mixing with something new, a faint hint of fresh rain on earth, though the sky above remained clear and star-dash filled as they turned a final curve. Lila saw it. The pond of quiet echoes lay in a wide, round hollow in the garden, cradled by smooth, soft hills and ringed with flowers that seemed to be leaning in as if listening. The water was not dark or deep. It was clear and shallow. It surfaced so still it looked like a polished mirror laid carefully upon the ground. Moonlight pooled across it in a silver sheet, and the stars above were reflected there, gentle and unblinking. There was no splash, no rush of water, no stream feeding it. The pond seemed to exist simply because the garden had decided that this was where stillness should live. Lila and Morrow stepped off the stone path and onto a soft carpet of moss that surrounded the pond. It was thick and cushiony beneath her feet, like walking across a bed made entirely of pillows. She curled her toes into it and felt her whole body exhale. "Sit," Morrow murmured, lowering himself gracefully onto the moss. "The pond listens best when you're comfortable." Lila sank down beside him, crossing her legs and resting her hands on her knees. The moon pendant at her chest warmed gently as though it recognized this place. A faint breeze skimmed the surface of the water and then slipped over her skin, cool and delicate like the edge of a silk scarf. For a few moments, they said nothing at all. They only sat. The garden hushed itself around them. The flowers along the edge of the pond folded their petals a little tighter, as if settling in to hear a bedtime story. The hills held their breath. Even the stars seemed to lean closer, their reflections trembling faintly on the surface of the water. "Listen," Morrow said softly. Lila did at first. All she heard was the quiet, the deep, gentle quiet that feels full instead of empty. But as she continued to listen, she realized there were tiny sounds inside that quiet, like threads woven through a blanket, the very soft rustle of petals as a flower adjusted its head, the faintest creak of a branch, swaying in a sleepy breeze, the distant hum of the sky, like a long, slow note sung by the night itself. And beneath it all, steady and calm, the sound of her own breathing. In and out, in and out. The pond responded. Its surface rippled without anything touching it, the waves spreading outward in slow, delicate circles. Each ripple carried with it a faint, silvery glow, like a ring of moonlight that had decided to go wandering. They reached the edge of the pond and then faded, leaving the water smooth again. "It's listening," Morrow said. "If there's anything you want it to hear, just think it gently. You don't even have to say it out loud." Lila looked at her reflection in the water. The girl who looked back at her had the same brown braid, the same pale blue nightdress, the same small crescent of silver at her chest. But the reflection's eyes seemed clearer, softer, as if sleep had already begun to close a few extra doors in her mind. She thought of the little worries that had stayed awake inside her when she lay in bed in her real room. Questions about tomorrow, things she hadn't finished, a small moment that had felt a little embarrassing and had replayed itself too many times in her head. She did not need to name them exactly. She just gathered them gently in her thoughts, the way one might gather small leaves into a basket. Then, silently, she let them drift toward the pond. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the water shivered, ever so slightly, as if a feather had touched its surface. A tiny ring of ripples spread outward. This time, the ripples were tinted not just silver, but with the faintest shades of color: soft blues, pale pinks, warm golds, like memories fading into the distance as the ripples moved away in slow circles. The thoughts in Lila's mind grew lighter. It felt as though someone were untangling a knot she hadn't even realized was there. The busy questions softened. The replaying moments grew fuzzy at the edges, like old drawings left in the sun. They weren't gone exactly. They were just far away now, on the other side of the pond, where she didn't need to touch them. Her shoulders eased. A breath she hadn't known she was holding slipped quietly out of her dot in and out. She watched the ripples settle, her eyelids growing heavier. Each time the pond grew still again, a little more of her day seemed to drift off into rest. The present moment, the moss beneath her, the gentle fox beside her, the moonlit water in front of her was all that remained, simple and soft, you see. Morrow's voice was barely more than a hum now. The pond keeps your echoes while you sleep. You don't have to carry them all. It feels. Lila searched for the right word, but her thoughts moved so slowly now that each one arrived like a cloud floating into view. It feels quiet inside my head. Morrow gave a small, pleased nod. That's what it likes to do. He shifted closer to her, his fur brushing against her side. It was warm and velvety, with just the faintest tickle of soft, glowing hairs. Without really deciding to, Lila let one hand rest gently on his back. The rise and fall of his breathing matched her own. His warmth soaked into her palm and then into her arm, traveling all the way to her heart in a gentle wave, in and out. The longer they sat, the more the pond of quiet echoes seemed to melt into the night. The reflections of the stars did not shimmer sharply. They glowed like sleepy lanterns. Every now and then, the surface would tremble and send out another ring of ripples, as if the pond had found one more small echo to hold and soften. Lila felt her body growing heavy in a nice way, like a blanket settling evenly across her shoulders. Her legs relaxed. Her feet sank more deeply into the moss, as if the earth wanted to cuddle them. Her head tilted slightly, and for a moment she simply let it stay that way. Supported by the quiet around her, Morrow noticed. Of course, he watched her with half-lidded eyes, his own sleepiness deepening, though he seemed content to drift at the same pace she did. "You can rest here if you want," he murmured. "Dreams inside of dreams are very soft. The garden will hold you." Lila thought about lying down next to the pond, closing her eyes and sinking even deeper into sleep. The idea was tempting. The moss looked like the softest pillow. The air smelled of lavender and rain and something sweet and creamy, like warm milk with honey. But a part of her was also curious about the rest of the moonlit garden and the places. Morrow had mentioned the path of floating feathers, the cloud bridge, the lantern hills. She felt as though each of those places might hold another piece of rest, another way to smooth the day's wrinkles. "Maybe just a little longer," she said. "I'd like to see more. I'm still sleepy, but it's a nice sleepy." Morrow's whiskers twitched as he gave a very small smile. "A drifting sleepy," he said. "The best kind." Lila nodded. The phrase settled into her like a lullaby. Drifting sleepy. That was exactly how she felt, like a leaf floating on calm water, moving slowly. Guided by something gentle and unseen, she watched the pond for a little while longer, letting the stillness seep into every corner of her. Thoughts that tried to stir were greeted by the sight of the smooth water, the soft stars. They yawned and lay back down before they could become loud. After a time that felt both long and wonderfully short, Morrow rose to his feet. He stretched slowly, his back arching, his tail reaching out in a long curve. A quiet, contented sound escaped him, like a sigh made by fur and moonlight. "The pond has had its turn," he said. "Now it's time for the feathers." Lila stood too, taking her time, feeling no rush at all. Her limbs moved easily, like they had been resting for hours, even though she knew only a little dream time had passed. She glanced down at the pond one last time. The water gazed back at her, calm and clear, reflecting her face and the moon and tiny specks of star-shaped blossoms that had fallen onto its surface. "Thank you," she whispered to it. For a moment, a single ripple spread from the center of the pond outward, as if in answer. Then all was still again. Morrow led the way back to the path, their steps sinking into the moss with soft, cushioned sounds. As they rejoined the moonlit stones, Lila noticed that her footsteps felt lighter than before. Each step was easy, as if the ground had grown softer under her. Or perhaps as if the worries that had weighed her down were now quietly resting on the bottom of the pond, where she no longer had to feel them. They walked in silence, but it was a friendly silence, the kind that needs no words at all, because everything important is already understood. The flowers along the path nodded in quiet approval as they passed. The stars above remained steady, their soft light wrapping the garden in a cozy glow. After a short while, the path began to change. The round moonlit stones grew farther apart, and between them appeared patches of something white and delicate. At first it looked like snow, but when Lila stepped onto it, she felt nothing cold. Instead, there was barely any feeling at all, only the faintest hint of touch. Like walking on a thought, she looked down. Beneath her feet, thousands of overlapping feathers covered the ground. They grew in gentle, swirling patterns, their edges soft and slightly curled. Some were pale blue, some were silver, some were almost transparent, catching the moonlight and turning it into a misty glow. They did not belong to any bird she knew. They seemed to belong to the night itself. "The path of floating feathers," Morrow said, his voice even lower now, as if it too were getting sleepier. "Here, each step makes you lighter. It's a good place to let go of the weight you don't even know you're carrying." Lila lifted one foot and placed it down again. The feather beneath it compressed like a cloud and then rose back up, as though gently nudging her forward. The next step was the same. With each one, she felt less tied to the ground and more like she was gliding quietly through a pool of moonlight. The feathers made no sound, but the hush they created felt like a sound of its own, a soft she that soothed every part of her, from the top of her head all the way to her toes. Her arms hung loosely by her sides, her fingers relaxed. Even her eyelids felt lighter on their hinges, as though they might close at any moment without effort. Morrow trotted a little ahead, his paws barely sinking into the feathers. Lila watched him for a moment and noticed that his movements had become even slower, like they were underwater. His tail floated behind him gently, leaving a faint glowing trail that faded as quickly as a sigh. "Look down," he suggested. She did, alongside her own footprints. Soft impressions in the feather path, tiny glimmers of light were appearing. Each one was small, about the size of a tear, but not heavy like a tear. They rose from the feathers in slow upward arcs, drifting like tiny lanterns. As they floated higher, they turned into sleepy little stars that joined the sky above. "What are those?" Lila breathed. Morrow glanced up at them, his eyes half closed, as if he had seen this many times before and never grown tired of it. "Bits of tiredness you don't need anymore," he said. "Little pieces of heaviness floating away. The path knows how to let them go." Lila watched as more of the faint lights lifted from where her feet had been. With each one, she felt something inside her loosen an old stiffness in her shoulders, a tightness behind her eyes, a small knot in her chest that had been tied by who knows what weeks ago. All of it rose gently, turned into light, and drifted up to join the calm stars. Step by soft step, she grew lighter. Her thoughts moved like slow, lazy fish in a clear pond, not in quick darting flashes. Her body felt as though it was being held very carefully by the night, supported from all sides. Even the air seemed to cradle her, warm and cool at the same time, like a perfectly balanced blanket. "Is this what it feels like to fall asleep?" she asked quietly. "This is what it feels like to be ready," Morrow replied. "Sleep itself is a gift the garden gives when you're not holding on to anything too tightly." Lila smiled a small, sleepy smile that fit perfectly on her face. She didn't feel the need to talk much anymore. Words were beginning to feel like pebbles, and silence was like a bed of feathers. She let the quiet slip in between them again as they walked. The path carried them gently forward, as if it had no end and no beginning, only a soft middle where everything moved at the speed of a yawn. Somewhere far behind them, the pond of quiet echoes rested in its hollow, holding all of the day's little echoes. Somewhere ahead, hidden behind folds of starlit mist, the cloud bridge waited with its own kind of peace. Lila drifted between those places, her steps silent, her mind smooth in the real world, in her bedroom. Her body lay relaxed and still under the pale blue blanket. Her breathing was slow and even. The moon outside her window watched through the glass as a faint smile touched her sleeping face. In the moonlit garden, Lila felt that she could walk forever without getting tired, or lie down at any moment and sink into the softest sleep. The feathers whispered beneath her feet. The stars above blinked once, gently, as if saying, "We're here, we're watching, rest as long as you need." She glanced at Morrow, who turned his head slightly to meet her gaze. His eyes were warm and sleepy, reflecting the stars and the drifting lights that floated from the feather path. "Where will we go next?" she asked, her voice barely louder than the hush of feathers. "To the cloud bridge," he answered, "where the dreams get even lighter and the sky comes a little closer. We'll go there when you're ready." Lila nodded, feeling that readiness settle over her like a second blanket. The moonlit garden had already begun its work, quieting her thoughts, lightening her steps, smoothing the edges of her day. With each breath, each step, each soft, soundless glide over the path of floating feathers, she drifted just a little deeper into the sweetest, safest part of sleep, and the night, patient and kind, drifted with her. The cloud bridge, asterisk, the path of floating feathers carried Lila and Morrow deeper into the moonlit garden. each step softer than the last. Though Lila walked, she felt as if she were drifting like a leaf in a warm breeze, or a dream rising gently through layers of sleep. The feathers beneath her feet sighed quietly, releasing tiny trails of silvery light that floated up and joined the sky. With every drifting spark, Lila felt her body loosen, her mind open, and her thoughts become smoother, rounder, easier to hold. Morrow walked a little ahead, turning back every so often to make sure Lila was still comfortable. His tail glowed faintly, like a small lantern swaying at the end of a sleepy fox. His paws left no footprints, but wherever he stepped, the feathers rustled in contentment, curling upward, as if trying to brush against him. The path widened, and the air grew cooler, not cold, but fresh, like the very beginning of morning before the sun has even thought about rising. Lila inhaled deeply. The scent was familiar in a dreamy way, clean, soft, almost like the smell of her favorite pillow after it has been warmed by sunlight. "We're close," Morrow said, his voice low and velvety. "Close to what?" Lila asked, though she already felt the answer forming around her. As naturally as mist forms around a waterfall, the cloud bridge, Morrow murmured, "where dreams grow lighter than memory, and rest becomes deeper than the quietest night." Lila's heart gave a slow, sleepy flutter. She didn't feel excited, not in the quick, jumping way she sometimes felt during the day, but in a soft, expanding way, the kind that spreads from your chest outward like a ripple. A faint glow appeared ahead, brighter than the feathers, yet softer than moonlight. It shimmered in the air like a silver curtain, gently waving, even though there was no breeze. Morrow stepped aside so Lila could see it fully. Before them stretched the cloud bridge. It was unlike anything she had seen before. Not solid stone, not wood, not even woven branches like the gate she had passed through. The bridge was made entirely of clouds, thick and smooth, and glowing faintly from within. They layered over one another in gentle curves, forming a soft, arching path that rose high above the garden before descending again somewhere far beyond. The clouds were the kind she had seen from airplane windows or in picture books, fluffy and white, with edges that glowed gold and silver. But she sensed that touching them would not feel like touching air or mist. Instead, they would probably feel like warm, comforting blankets, freshly laid out for bedtime. The base of the bridge touched the feather path seamlessly, as though the feathers themselves had turned into clouds. Lila stepped closer and felt her breath catch but softly. Like a sigh, the clouds beneath the first step pulsed with gentle light. As if greeting her, Morrow padded forward and tested the edge with his paw. The cloud dipped a little, then lifted him back up, as if holding him. "It knows we're here," he said. "Will it hold me too?" Lila asked. "It will hold you," Morrow replied. "It's built from dream stuff, and dreams always know how to carry their dreamers." She placed one foot onto the cloud. It was warm, like a sunlit plush, toy-and, yet cool at the same time, as if it held the perfect temperature between waking and dreaming. The softness rose to meet her foot, cradling it gently, making her toes sink in just enough to feel supported. She stepped fully onto the bridge. Immediately, she felt it, the sensation of lifting, not rising quickly, like being pushed upward, but drifting upward, slowly, gently, like a balloon that has been let go and is taking its time. The bridge arched higher and higher over the moonlit garden. As they ascended, the garden below softened into a silvery, star-dusted blur. The pond of quiet echoes glowed like a tiny mirror. The path of floating feathers became a pale ribbon flowing through the hills. The trees shimmered with sleepy blossoms that blinked up at her as though seeing her off. "Where does the bridge go?" Lila asked. "To the Lantern Hills," Morrow said. "They are where the sky holds dreams that haven't settled yet. Dreams waiting to become something." "What kind of something?" "Whatever you need most." Lila nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure what she needed. Maybe peace, maybe comfort, maybe a dream so gentle it would stay with her like a warm scarf even after she woke up. They continued walking as they climbed. The clouds beneath their feet grew brighter in soft pulses. The pulses matched the rhythm of their steps, and gradually the rhythm of their breathing, in and out, in and out. Lila felt her thoughts stretching again, like her mind was taking a long, slow yawn. "Do the clouds talk?" she asked suddenly, noticing that each step made a faint, soothing hum, like a lullaby, with no beginning and no end. "Not in words," Morrow answered, "but they listen, and they understand." "What do they understand?" Morrow's smile was small, sleepy, knowing, tiredness, wishes, things you don't say aloud. They hold them gently. Lila looked down at the cloud beneath her foot. It glowed in a soft blue tone, then dimmed to silver as she lifted her foot again. The hum changed slightly with each step, adjusting to her pace, matching her mood. It was all so peaceful that her eyelids drooped a little without her realizing, Morrow noticed. "You can rest on the bridge if you'd like. It will hold you safely." Lila didn't sit yet, but the idea of resting on a bed made of clouds made her whole body tingle with warmth. "What is that?" she asked suddenly. Asterisk ahead of them, halfway up the arched bridge. Swirling shapes floated in the air circles, spirals, ribbons of glowing mist that looped around one another like dancers moving slowly through water. "The whisper rings," Morrow said. "They show you your calmest thoughts." "Calmest thoughts," Lila echoed. "The ones that help you rest the most," Morrow said. "The ones that make your breathing slow and your heart warm." Lila stepped into the first whisper ring. It enveloped her like a soft shawl, warm and silky, its mist curling around her arms and drifting through her braid. Shapes formed inside the ring, images made of pale, dreamlike colors, a window with gentle rain tapping on it, her favorite blanket being unfolded, a cup of warm cocoa on a cold day, her mother humming to herself in the kitchen. Asterisk, a small memory she'd almost forgotten when she was 2 or 3, falling asleep in the crook of her father's arm while he read her a nighttime story. None of the memories were sharp. They were soft, blurred at the edges, like paintings stroked gently by mist. They weren't telling her anything. They weren't asking her to think or feel or react. They were simply drifting in front of her, quiet and warm. The whisper ring brightened, then released her gently into the next one. This ring showed something else, the feeling of floating on her back in a pool one summer afternoon, when everything was quiet and cool and slow. The water had held her. The sky had watched her. She remembered how her body had gone limp with trust. "This is," Lila whispered. "Nice dreams know what you need," Morrow replied. They passed through several more whisper rings, each one showing something soft. The smell of clean laundry, still warm from the drier. The sound of pages turning in her favorite book. The glow of a nightlight shaped like a moon. The warmth of holding her stuffed bear while falling asleep. The sound of her own breathing when she's lying very still with each ring. Lila felt herself becoming easier inside. Her thoughts thinned and drifted. Her heart slowed. Her shoulders dropped. She felt as though she were being carried not by arms, not by hands, but by comfort itself. The cloud bridge began to level out. They had reached the highest point, where the air was filled with starlight, so soft it seemed to dissolve into her skin. Lila looked out and saw that the moonlit garden stretched far wider than she had imagined. In the distance, gentle hills glowed like lanterns scattered across the night. Mist curled around them in trails of light. The lantern hills. Morrow said quietly. Lila sighed, long and full, like a wave settling into shore. They look beautiful. They are, Morrow replied. We'll go there next. But first, he curled his tail around her legs gently, guiding her toward the edge of the bridge. Sit with me for a moment. Lila sat. The cloud beneath her felt warm and soft, reshaping itself to hold her perfectly. She leaned back slightly. The sky above seemed closer somehow, as if it were bending down to greet her. The air vibrated with a low, soothing hum. Morrow curled beside her, resting his head lightly against her knee. His breathing was slow, steady, rhythmic. The garden below shimmered like a dream, sleeping beneath a blanket. The sky above winked with 1,000 soft stars. Lila let her eyes close halfway, not fully, just enough to let the world blur into stillness. Her breathing matched Morrow's without effort. Her heart felt warm, wrapped in something soft and safe. Why does it feel easier to breathe up here? She asked in a dreamy whisper. Because the sky holds half your weight for you, Morrow murmured. It makes room for your rest. Lila smiled faintly. I feel like I could sleep right here. You can, Morrow said softly. But there's one more place tonight. The Lantern Hills. They'll give you dreams to carry back when you wake. Lila nodded, her head tilting a little, her body melting gently into the cloud. For a while, they simply sat, not moving, not speaking, just breathing, just being held by the night. And when Lila finally opened her eyes again, she felt as though she had taken a nap inside a dream, inside a lullaby. She stood slowly. Morrow rose beside her, shaking off a thin dusting of starlight. With one last gentle pulse beneath their feet, the cloud bridge began to slope downward toward the glowing hills beyond. Are you ready? Morrow asked. Lila took a deep breath, soft and calm. Yes, she said, barely above a whisper. Let's go. Together, they walked down the cloud bridge and into the heart of the Lantern Hills where the dreams waited. The Lantern Hills asterisk. The cloud bridge curved downward so gently that Lila hardly noticed the moment her feet left the soft warmth of the clouds and touched the glowing ground below. The Lantern Hills rose in front of her like a quiet constellation made of earth-rounded slopes covered in warm golden light, each hill glowing from within as if holding a tiny sun beneath its surface. But the light wasn't bright or harsh. It was soft, like candlelight filtered through warm honey. It filled the air with a gentle shimmer, enough to see every detail, while still feeling wrapped in a glow that made her eyelids grow warm and heavy. The moment Lila stepped off the cloud and into the hills, she felt something new, a gentle humming inside her chest, matching her heartbeat. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even sound exactly. It was more like a feeling, like being welcomed. Morrow stepped beside her, his fur catching the golden glow. Each strand seemed to sparkle faintly, as if dipped in light. "The Lantern Hills," he said softly, "are where dreams learn to shine." Lila tilted her head. "Shine," Morrow nodded, padding forward. "Some dreams stay quiet and hidden. Some flicker like little flames. Some become lanterns bright enough to guide you even when you're awake." As they began to walk, the ground under Lila's feet felt warm and velvety, very different from the feathers and clouds. It reminded her of stepping onto a heated floor on a winter morning. Comfort seeped upward through her legs, into her chest, and finally into her face, relaxing her features without her even trying. Every hill they passed glowed a little differently. Some had a rosy hue, as if filled with sunrise. Others were pale gold. Some shone with cool blue light, like moonlight trapped inside a bubble. "Why do they look different?" she asked. "Because each hill holds a different kind of dream," Morrow explained. "Dreams of courage, dreams of wonder, dreams of peace, dreams of growing, dreams of remembering something good, dreams of letting go." Lila felt her heart flutter gently. "Which hill is for me?" Morrow smiled with his eyes. "They'll show you. Hills know who is ready for them." They walked deeper into the glowing landscape. The air around the hills shimmered like strands of soft silk drifting through the night. Every now and then, Lila felt a gentle brush against her arms or cheek, warm, light. Not wind, not mist, something else, something alive. "What's that?" she whispered. Morrow paused. "Lantern spirits." The moment he said it, Lila noticed them more clearly, tiny shapes drifting around them like floating fireflies. They weren't insects, though. They were small orbs of light, each about the size of a fingertip, glowing gently in gold, white, blue, or pink. Some pulsed like sleepy heartbeats. Some drifted in slow spirals. Some floated close to Lila, hovering near her hair or the hem of her nightdress, as if sniffing her curiosity. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "They're harmless," Morrow assured her. "Some may follow you. They like peaceful dreamers." One little orb, glowing pale blue, drifted close and settled just above her shoulder. It stayed there, pulsing gently in time with her breath. Lila raised her hand to it. It didn't move away. It only glowed a little brighter. "This one likes you," Morrow said. "It feels soft," Lila whispered, though she couldn't feel it in a physical way. It was more like feeling seen and safe. The hills stretched ahead in glowing rows. They walked until the path curved between two large hills, each one glowing a warm, steady gold. "These are the hills of rest," Morrow said. "They show you what your heart finds most soothing." As they approached, the golden light brightened a little, not sharp or sudden, but like a warm yawn. Small lanterns appeared along the sides of the path, real lanterns, not floating spirits. Each one hung from a delicate silver hook that grew up from the ground like a liquid metal vine. The lanterns themselves were made of crystal petals shaped like flowers. Inside each one flickered a tiny flame that emitted no heat, only a soft, shimmering glow. When Lila passed the first one, it chimed gently, a sound so delicate that it felt like hearing a memory of wind passing through glass. "What does that sound mean?" she asked. Morrow flicked his tail. "It means the lantern knows you're here, and it's glad." The hills grew taller as they walked, rising gently like the swell of a giant's peaceful breath. At the top of the tallest hill stood a single lantern. It was bigger than the others, about the size of a pumpkin hand, hung from an arch made of silver branches. The light inside it was not gold or pink, but a soft, pale white, glowing like the moon behind a thin veil of clouds. Lila felt her own steps slowing, not because she was tired, but because everything in this place encouraged slowness. Peace wasn't something you rushed into. Peace happened gradually, like petals opening at dawn. When she reached the top of the hill, she looked out. The entire moonlit garden stretched below her like a glowing quilt stitched with silver rivers, cloud bridges, feather paths, and star-blossomed trees. A hush fell over everything, even quieter than before. Lila felt the quiet press gently against her skin, like the comforting weight of a soft blanket. Morrow sat next to her, tail curled neatly around his paws. "This is where dreamers learn to breathe deeply," he murmured, "where they watch the night shine and understand that they too can shine." Lila sat beside him, pulling her legs beneath her. The cloud spirit that had followed her settled on her shoulder again, floating like a tiny moon. "What do I do?" she asked. "Just watch," Morrow replied. "The hills will show you something." Lila turned back to the glowing lantern. It flickered once, gently, then brightened. The light pushed outward in a slow wave, wrapping around Lila like a warm breeze, and then it began. The lantern's glow rose into the air, forming shapes, soft shapes made of mist and light. Like dream pictures, the first picture was simple, her room at home, but not the messy version, not the rushed, daytime version. The picture showed her bed neatly made, with her silver star blanket smoothed out. Her nightlight glowed softly against the wall. Her bookshelf stood tidy, with her favorite book resting on top. Everything was calm, quiet, and waiting for her. The picture drifted away, replaced by another. Lila curled up with a warm mug of cocoa, steam drifting like tiny ribbons into the air. Outside the window, snow fell in slow, silent flakes. Inside, the room glowed with soft lamplight. Another picture formed, Lila walking through a garden of morning dew, her fingers brushing wet petals. Each petal glowed as she touched it, and the sound of birds singing trailed behind her like music. Another Lila, laughing, wrapped in her mother's arms after a long day. Her father stood nearby, smiling, holding a blanket he'd warmed just for her. Another Colin, a quiet afternoon, her head resting on a pillow, sunlight streaming across her face, her book half open beside her. Each picture faded gently into the air, dissolving into sparkles that floated upward like motes of dust caught in sunlight. Lila's heart felt warm, peaceful, steady. "Why am I seeing these?" she asked softly. "These are your resting memories," Morrow said. "The moments when you felt safe, when you felt comfort, when your heart beat slowly. The hills show them to you so you can remember what it feels like to be deeply, completely relaxed." The lantern brightened again. This time, the pictures were not memories, but feelings, not things she had seen, but things she had felt, the weight of sleep settling gently on her shoulders, the softness of a pillow under her cheek, the warmth of holding her stuffed bear, the safety of her mother's hand on her back. During a storm, the calm of watching Raindrops slide down a window, the peace of lying in grass and watching clouds drift by. These feelings wrapped around her in waves, so gentle and rhythmic that she felt herself drifting inside them. Her breathing deepened, her shoulders fell, her heart slowed to match the soft pulse of the hills. "Can dreams heal tired hearts?" Lila asked in a whisper, her voice wrapped in sleep. Morrow pressed his warm fur against her side. "Not heal," he said, "but remind you how to rest. And that may be the same thing." Lila let her head fall lightly onto his back. His fur was warm, like a sunlit blanket, and soft enough to sink into. Morrow didn't move away. He simply adjusted so she could rest more comfortably. The lantern dimmed and then brightened, dimmed and brightened, like a sleeping breath. The pictures dissolved and the hills returned to stillness. Lila felt her eyelids droop heavily, thick with dream dust. "You're ready," Morrow murmured. "For what?" Lila's voice barely floated past her lips. "For the last part of the night," he whispered, "the Deep Dream Meadow." Lila tilted her sleepy head. "What's that?" "The place where dreams tuck you in," Morrow said, his tail curling gently around her legs. "Where nothing can reach you except rest." Lila sat up slowly, feeling the pull of sleep like the tide pulling her gently toward shore. The small lantern spirit floated in front of her face, pulsing softly as though urging her forward. "Will it be warm?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "Warm," Morrow replied softly, "and safe, and quiet, and yours." Lila smiled, sleepy and content. Morrow rose and hopped lightly down from the hill. Lila stood, stretching her arms with a long, slow yawn. The tiny spirit nestled back onto her shoulder. Together, they walked toward a soft, golden valley where a faint mist curled like a blanket waiting to be unfolded. The hills behind them glowed in farewell. The night ahead shimmered with promise, and Lila stepped forward, ready for the deepest dream of all. The Deep Dream Meadow, the golden fog at the foot of the Lantern Hills curled around Lila's ankles like warm steam rising from a cup of cocoa. It drifted slowly, lazily, as if stretching itself awake or perhaps asleep and welcoming her into its quiet embrace. The little light spirit on her shoulder pulsed a soft, dreamy blue, humming a vibration she could feel more than hear. Morrow padded ahead, his steps soundless. His silver-gray fur glowed more warmly now, picking up the gold of the mist, creating a halo around him. When he spoke, his voice was a velvety whisper. "We're very close. The meadow is where dreams settle, where thoughts grow soft, where even the sky lies down." Lila followed him deeper into the mist. With each step, her feet sank into something plush, softer than feathers, warmer than moss, thicker than clouds. It was like stepping on gigantic, fluffy petals that sighed under her weight and lifted her lightly back up. "What is this?" she murmured. "Rest," Morrow replied with a soft flick of his tail. "You're walking on rest itself." The fog parted slowly, like curtains being drawn aside in a sleepy theater, and then Lila saw it. The Deep Dream Meadow stretched out before her like a glowing ocean of softness. The ground was blanketed in layers of gentle colors, pale blues, warm lilacs, luminous creams, like someone had spilled moonlight into fields of velvet. Instead of grass, soft strands of light waved gently back and forth, releasing tiny particles that drifted upward like glowing dust motes. The entire meadow breathed in slow, steady pulses, in and out, in and out. Everything breathed. Even the sky above seemed closer than before. A deep indigo dome dusted with stars that glowed like lanterns floating in still water. The moon, full and soft, hung low as if trying to listen. "What do I do here?" Lila whispered. "You rest," Morrow said. "Fully. This is the place where dreams tuck you in. The place you won't reach when you force sleep, only when you drift toward it." Lila stepped forward. The meadow responded. Soft light spiraled around her ankles, rising up and washing her in warmth from toes to chest. The little spirit on her shoulder drifted into the air and hovered in front of her face, growing brighter then unexpectedly. It split into 3 smaller glowing orbs, one pale blue, one soft gold, one warm lavender. They circled her head like tiny moons. "What is happening?" Lila breathed. "They're weaving your dream blanket," Morrow murmured with a small, sleepy smile. "A blanket made of your quietest thoughts." Lila felt something warm settle along her shoulders. Not fabric, but a sensation like the weight of a perfect blanket. Warm where it needed to be warm. Cool where it needed to be cool. Hugging her shape exactly. It made her knees loosen, her arms grow heavy, her eyes soften. Morrow walked to her side and gently brushed his fur against her leg. "Follow me," he whispered. "There is a place here that belongs to you." He led her to the center of the meadow, where a small hollow dipped into the glowing earth. It looked like someone had pressed a giant, gentle palm into the ground, making a nest of perfect curves. The edges were lined with cloud-like strands that glowed softly, shaped like cushions grown from the earth. "This is your dreaming place," Morrow said. "Every dreamer has one in this meadow." Lila stepped into the hollow. The moment her foot touched it, the hollow warmed. The ground shifted under her, not moving, but reshaping, contouring to her feet, her shape, her breath. It felt as though the meadow already knew her weight, her comfort, her softness. She lowered herself slowly. When her knees touched the ground, it rose slightly to meet them, gently supporting her. When she sat fully, the nest cupped her body like a cradle. "Oh," she whispered. "It feels so perfect." "That's the meadow," Morrow said softly. "It remembers how you rest best." He curled beside her, pressing his warm, fluffy body against her hip. Lila leaned into him instinctively, her braid slipping over her shoulder. The moon pendant on her chest glowed faintly, as if it recognized this place, the deepest place of sleep. "Close your eyes," Morrow murmured. She did immediately. The meadow reacted, a soft breeze, not cold, just cool enough to soothe, brushed across her forehead. The glowing particles drifting through the air slowed and gathered above her like fireflies, forming a canopy. They pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. In and out, she didn't feel like she was lying down. She felt like she was floating, asterisk, not up, not away, just floating inside herself, inside her rest, inside the softest part of sleep. Lila, Morrow whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first, she heard nothing. Then, slowly, she realized the quiet had texture. It was not silence, it was peace, the faint hum of the lantern hills in the distance, the low, warm pulse of the meadow beneath her, the soft whisper of glowing strands brushing each other like fingers touching pillows, the slow heartbeat of the sky overhead, and through all of it Morrow's steady breathing beside her, warm and safe. "This is the sound of letting go," Morrow said. "The sound dreams use to carry you home." Lila felt her limbs melting, not disappearing, but relaxing in a way she had never felt before. No weight, no pressure, no thoughts that tugged or buzzed, only warmth, only softness. She felt the meadow cradle her more deeply. The glowing ground rose up a little, hugging her sides, supporting her back, lifting her head just enough. The dream blanket of feelings wrapped around her, heavy enough to comfort, light enough to breathe through. "Will I wake up soon?" Lila whispered, her voice barely a flutter. "When you're ready," Morrow answered. "Not before." She opened her eyes just a little. The stars above her were brighter now, or maybe closer, or maybe she was seeing them the way dreams see things, bigger, gentler, warmer. "Don't be afraid of waking," Morrow murmured. "Dreams don't leave you empty. They leave you rested." He nuzzled her shoulder. "And you have rested beautifully tonight." The words wrapped around her like the last soft stitch on a quilt. Lila's eyes closed again. Her breathing slowed even more, in and out, in and out. The glowing particles above drifted down like shimmering snow, dissolving into her dream blanket. The meadow pulsed once, twice, then settled into perfect stillness. Lila slipped deeper, not into darkness, not into nothingness, but into the deepest part of sleep. A warm, floating place where dreams are soft and safe and slow. Her last waking thought was, "I feel home," and then a soft shift in the air, a gentle glow behind her eyelids, a familiar warmth. When Lila opened her eyes again, she was lying in her own bed. Her pale blue blanket with silver stars was pulled up to her chin. Her moon pendant rested against her chest, morning light, golden and soft, filtered through her curtains. The room smelled faintly of lavender. Had she been gone all night? Had she ever left? Her heart felt so full, so warm, so rested, that she knew the answer without needing to think. The moonlit garden had been real in its own way. The cloud bridge, the lantern hills, the quiet pond, and Morrow. She touched her pendant, and for a moment she thought she saw a faint silver shimmer under her fingers. Lila smiled, rested, soft, safe, just as a deep dream should leave her, and somewhere far away, or perhaps very close, the moonlit garden breathed a gentle sigh, waiting for her next visit.